I'm usually the person that says this doesn't matter. But here are three reasons. Three numbers, in fact, that explain why I think it does matter. The three numbers here are 6, 10, and 50. 6. The number of towns in Massachusetts that did not vote for that state's Republican governor when he ran for re-election in 1994. There are 351 towns in Massachusetts. All but 6 of them voted to re-elect the Republican governor in that state that year. And that was at a time when only 15% of the state was registered Republican. But look at the map. Look at how much that Republican governor won that state that year. The Republican governor who got re-elected that year in that state by such a massive margin, by the biggest margin ever in the history of that state, was a guy named Bill Weld. Bill Weld was a socially liberal, fiscally conservative Republican. We don't have those anymore, but we used to. And Bill Weld used to be the paragon example of that political beast. Bill Weld was elected governor in Massachusetts in 1990, as the first time that state had elected a Republican governor in 20 years. But he was so popular, his time in office was seen as such a success that his re-election margin in 1994 broke every record in the state. On fiscal issues, he was conservative and successful. The Libertarian Cato Institute praised him during his time in office as the greatest governor in the nation. On social issues, he was liberal. He made the conservatives in his own party throw fits at the Republican conventions in 1992 and 1996 when he gave a big pro-choice speech, when he insisted on being pro-gay rights, when he argued aggressively that the party ought to scrap its anti-abortion language in the Republican Party platform. There used to be Republicans like that. Bill Weld was among the last of them. They don't make them like that anymore. But that's how you end up with a remarkable electoral record like he had in Massachusetts. This Republican governor in a blue state winning all but 6 of the 351 towns and cities in that state. So that's the number 6. The number 10, a gold dime. You can see it's marked there, 1/10 of 1 ounce of fine gold. On the other side of that dime, David Koch in the back, David Koch of the Koch brothers. In 1980, the Libertarian Party ran a guy named Ed Clark as their presidential nominee, and they ran billionaire Koch brother David Koch as his vice presidential running mate. As the Libertarian presidential ticket that year, their campaign minted these gold dimes as party favors, like campaign trinkets for their fundraisers and their supporters. Also tells you something about how these guys thought of themselves, a libertarian sense of their self-worth, that even while they were just running for office, they were already printing money with their own heads on it. Despite that supreme Caesar-like self-confidence, Ed Clark and David Koch got nowhere in that campaign. They ended up with 1% of the vote nationwide, and that ended up being the last time either Koch brother made a personal attempt at running for office. After that failed and fairly expensive effort in 1980, gold dimes and all, the Koch brothers instead moved on to bankrolling other candidates instead of running for office themselves. This year, though, that bankrolling candidate strategy has fallen apart for them, because this year in the presidential race, the Koch brothers apparently do not like the presidential option presented. David Koch's brother Charles has gone so far this year as to even float the idea that they might support Hillary Clinton instead of Donald Trump, even though it made him turn green when he said it. A lot of Republicans don't like Donald Trump, including party leaders like the last Republican nominee, Mitt Romney, like party zillionaire donors, the Koch brothers. They don't like Donald Trump. They don't want to vote for Hillary Clinton either. Those guys are looking for the Plan C. That's what's led to all these sort of pitiful Beltway news stories about conservatives looking for another option, looking for an independent candidacy, looking for some kind of third-party run, or maybe they'll just run individual Republicans in individual states here and there as a symbolic protest, or a way that conservatives and Republicans can vote for someone at the top of the ticket other than Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. And that search for a Plan C among Republicans and conservatives, that brings us to our third and final number, which is the number 50. Because there's only one political party in the United States, other than the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, that have ballot access this year in all 50 states. And that's the Libertarian Party, which, honestly, usually isn't that big a deal. Gary Johnson, the former 2-term governor of New Mexico, he was the Libertarian Party's presidential nominee in 2012. He did about as well as the David Koch ticket did back in 1980, got about 1% of the vote. Gary Johnson is running again this year. He wants to be the Libertarian Party's presidential nominee again this year. They will make their decision as to who their nominee is at their national convention over Memorial Day in Orlando, Florida. Hasn't been any sign yet this year that Gary Johnson was catching any more fire this time around than he did in 2012. FEC filings showed that at the end of March, Gary Johnson had a grand total of $35,000 in his campaign bank account, which is not much for running for president. Here's the thing, though. Compared to 2012, compared to 1980, compared to any other election in the last 40 years, the Republican Party nominating Donald Trump to run against Hillary Clinton means that a lot more Republican voters and donors may be looking for a plan C. They're too right-wing to ever consider voting for Hillary Clinton, but they cannot stomach Donald Trump on their own side. A lot of those folks feel like it's irresponsible or just wrong to not vote at all, and so there has been an effort to try to find some sort of plan C. If we're honest about it, there really isn't any way that an independent candidate can get ballot access in all 50 states at this late point in the process. Some of the states have had their deadlines already pass. Other states have their deadlines steaming down toward us very quickly. And a lot of work and a lot of money has to be spent in order to get it done. Getting on the ballot in all 50 states right now with an independent candidacy, it's just not possible. But the Libertarian candidate this year will be on the ballot in all 50 states. They've got ballot access. And just for kicks, the Fox News national presidential poll that came out last night included Gary Johnson, the Libertarian guy, when they polled people across the country yesterday on their presidential preferences. Gary Johnson, who most people don't even know was running this year. Gary Johnson, in this new Fox News poll, polls 10% against Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton right now. That's interesting in its own right. It's also potentially huge if Gary Johnson does get the Libertarian nomination and he can build on that 10% support even just a little bit. And that's because the rules for the general election debates say that a third-party candidate can qualify to be in those debates, right up there with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, if that candidate hits 15% in 5 national polls. It's a little more complicated than that. It's a little more specific than that, but that's basically it. You need to be polling at 15% nationwide to get into the presidential debates. Gary Johnson is already apparently polling at 10% nationwide. How hard would it be for him to get to 15? So you combine all those things together, the unusual appetite on the right for a non-Trump option on the general election ballot, the Libertarian Party all but assuredly having 50-state ballot access already this year. Huge donors like the Koch brothers being very uninterested in supporting Donald Trump, but having been very supportive of the Libertarian Party in the past. David Koch having run himself on the Libertarian Party in the past. You combine all of those factors, and it starts to feel like maybe this Libertarian Party option this year, maybe it could be a bigger deal than it usually is. If only the Libertarian Party this year, with all these variables at work, if only that party this year could somehow get less fringe, if they could get a little closer to what establishment Republicans are comfortable with. If only they could make themselves more Republican-ish than they usually are. Particularly if they can do that with someone who seems electorally viable, someone who poses no risk of being another 1% candidate like all the Libertarians have been in the past. Well, today, Gary Johnson of the Libertarian Party announced that if he gets the Libertarian nomination for president, which he is likely to do, he would like his running mate to be Bill Weld, the guy who won all but 6 towns in Massachusetts when he ran for re-election there in that deep blue state as a fiscally conservative, socially liberal Republican. Bill Weld has agreed to be Gary Johnson's running mate on the Libertarian Party ticket if the Libertarian Party selects them at their national convention on Memorial Day. Bill Weld running on the Libertarian ticket with Gary Johnson. This is like if you've been playing adult pickup soccer on Thursday afternoons after work, and it's fun and it keeps you in shape, but you just found out that David Beckham is joining your team. And yeah, you know, David Beckham is retired. He's got a modeling career going on now. It seems like he's just a full-time dad, but yeah, he's still David freaking Beckham. Kind of makes you feel differently about your team and about your chances in pickup soccer playing against other teams. There was a flurry today of poorly sourced excitement at a conservative website called The Daily Caller when they suggested this afternoon that the Koch brothers were prepared to support Gary Johnson and Bill Weld with tens of millions of dollars in a general election effort. The Koch organization is denying that they have made any such commitment. But if that were to happen, if that were to come to pass, which does not seem inconceivable, then this third-party prospect, which has been somewhere between a joke and a fantasy for years now, this year is the real thing. Just in case you were starting to feel like this election this year was going to be boring.